Have you ever wondered how a silent, unseen enemy could wipe out nearly 60% of an entire continent's population within a few years? Let's journey back to the 14th century, to a time when Europe faced one of its darkest hours. The Black Death, a devastating pandemic, swept across the land, leaving a trail of despair and death. It wasn't a war, or famine, or a natural disaster. This was an invisible enemy, a plague. Imagine an entire continent brought to its knees, not by war, but by an invisible enemy. In the year 1347, a darkness began to spread across Europe, a darkness not seen but felt. This was no ordinary shadow. It was a lethal pandemic, a silent killer that would become known as the Black Death. It all started far to the east in the heart of Asia, where a deadly bacteria, Yersinia pestis, found a home in the fleas living on rats. These fleas, you see, were the unsuspecting carriers of this deadly disease. They hopped from rat to rat and eventually onto ships, carried by the bustling trade routes that connected the east and west. Before long, the disease had made its way to Europe. It traveled swiftly, hidden in the fur of the rats that scurried through the streets and aboard the ships. As the pandemic spread, societies were thrown into chaos, and life as people knew it began to change drastically. The onset of darkness had just begun, and the world was about to witness one of the most devastating chapters in human history. Imagine living in a world where every cough could spell doom, where every fever could be a death sentence. This was the reality during the reign of the Black Death, a time when symptoms of the plague emerged suddenly and insidiously. The disease began innocently enough, with a slight fever, chills, and body aches, but within days, these symptoms escalated into a high fever, delirium, and the appearance of painful, swollen lymph nodes, or buboes, which gave the bubonic plague its name. The rapid progression of the disease left no room for normalcy. People's daily lives were consumed by fear and uncertainty. The streets that were once bustling with trade and chatter were now eerily silent, save for the passing of the death carts. Homes were abandoned, businesses shuttered, and entire families disappeared overnight. The social fabric was unraveling at an alarming rate. The economy, too, was in shambles. With the workforce decimated, fields lay fallow and trade routes were deserted. Money lost its value as survival became the only currency that mattered. In the face of such devastation, people turned to religion, superstition, and even blamed each other for their plight. They sought solace in prayer, looked for signs in the stars, and pointed fingers at their neighbors. But little did they know the real enemy was not of this world, but a microscopic killer lurking in the shadows. What happens when a society is decimated? What is left in the wake of such a catastrophe? These are the questions that hang heavy in the air when we think about the aftermath of the Black Death, a catastrophic event that decimated Europe between 1347 and 1351. Imagine a world where between 75 million and 200 million people are suddenly wiped out. That's what happened in the aftermath of the Black Death. An estimated 60% of the population in some areas was lost. Entire villages, towns, even cities were abandoned, left to crumble and decay. The loss was so great that it took Europe more than a century to regain its pre-plague population. But it wasn't just a loss of life that defined the aftermath of the Black Death. The plague also brought about significant social changes. With so many dead, labor became scarce, leading to a shift in the balance of power between the nobility and the peasantry. The feudal system, which had been the backbone of European society, began to crumble. There was a rise in peasant revolts, and a new class of merchants and artisans emerged. Society was reshaped, not by the hand of man, but by the claws of a deadly disease. The economic consequences were just as profound. The sudden decrease in population led to a surplus of goods, causing prices to plummet. This, coupled with the labor shortage, led to an increase in wages for the surviving workers. On the other hand, the nobility, who relied on rents and dues from their peasants, found their wealth significantly reduced. The Black Death also had long-lasting effects that are still seen today. It led to advancements in medicine and public health as people sought to understand and prevent future outbreaks. It also had a profound effect on art and culture, with themes of mortality and the fleetingness of life becoming prevalent. The Black Death left a legacy that still echoes through time, a stark reminder of the power of nature and the resilience of humanity. It's a story of devastation and loss, but also of change, resilience, and ultimately survival. The Black Death was a dark chapter in human history, a time of fear and devastation. This cataclysmic event began with the onset of a deadly disease, characterized by chilling symptoms that brought society to its knees. But the legacy of the Black Death is not just one of destruction. It also reshaped societies, economies, and cultures in profound ways. As we look back on this time of tragedy, we are reminded of the resilience of humanity, the power of adaptation, and the importance of preparedness in the face of a pandemic.